iConz of Rock presents.
You, in our last segment, you referred briefly to Mama Lion, which is not only most famously known for the music, but the very beautiful and provocative in those days album cover, of course.
Right.
And James Newton Howard was involved with that project. So
yeah.
Tell me about your life and love and experience with James.
Okay, well, it starts off by always wanting to form a band and put Lynn, my girlfriend, out front. She had a group on Epic called C.K. Strong, and then I brought her in on the Ivar Avenue reunion jam thing. And we did, we did some things together in harmony, and it seemed to be all right. But I always had the thought to put her out front because I don't know if this is jumping into a weird situation, but Full Tilt Boogie was rehearsing across the hall from us at Studio Instrument Rentals one day, and like I told you, Rick Bell from the Trip in the early days in Toronto wound up with Full Tilt Boogie. So we were talking, and I left rehearsal to go out into the parking lot, and I'm standing there, and Janice came out and lit up this big joint. And
Janice being, for our viewers.
Yeah, Janice Joplin, and the two of us just hung out.
To her, first name terms, but our viewers need. Yes, he means Janice Joplin.
Yeah, we hung out for the length of the joint, so to speak, and we had a big laugh. She used to laugh really infectiously, And at the end of the joint and the end of our time together, before we both went back into our rehearsal facilities, she asked what I was doing for dinner and asked if I would meet her later at the Magic Castle for dinner. Because we got along so good, I guess. So later on that day, I called up the Landmark to get Rick on the phone and find out when we were going to meet up. And Rick gets on the phone and he sounds like horrible. I said, "What happened?" He says, "Janice just died." So that very day. So I was putting this act together at that point, and it was going to be a Merryweather and Carey duet kind of thing. And then I thought maybe I'll just see if Rick wants to come in and we'll do a band with her out front. Not because Janice died, but because I always wanted to do that. Right. And Rick was all sad and it was awful, and I thought, geez, the best thing to do to
honor her.
And is to keep going, so.
Wow.
But
I have seldom been gobsmacked in my career as an interviewer, but.
Yeah, that was really, really, really an awful thing.
And so, James, back to James Newton Howard and
Mama
Lion.
Yeah, so after I did the Ivar Avenue and we did do some Merryweather and Carey, I eventually did put her out front.
Right.
And that was this group Mama Lion that I created. The original keyboard player was a guy that Merryweather had met at a gig in San Bernardino, this guy Charlie, but he hit his shower door and cut his arm up to the elbow, so he couldn't play, and I needed a keyboard player. So this kid would frequent Mama Lion's rehearsal facility at the record plant and play me these tapes of his little band, and the keyboard guy was unbelievable. So I conned the kid into bringing him to a rehearsal. I took him aside and I said, please join my band. It was James Newton Howard, called Jim Howard. We call him Jim. And he got right into the band, and we had all of the gear. We had the B3 with the 4 Leslies and the Showman, so he just like slipped right into the band, and we did a bunch of stuff together.
He's Mr. Film Music now.
Yes, he is. And at the end of the wind-up of the two Mama Lion albums, we also did this thing called Heavy Cruiser, 2 albums as just the guys in the band. But we could never give our names on the album because Artie Ripp wouldn't let us. Right. He thought it would interfere with Mama Lion. So he made money off these 2 things that we did. And near the end of the band itself, Jim, I got him this ionic synthesizer. This guy came by the studio when we were working in New York, and he was promoting this synthesizer. So we went to the factory, and Jim loved it, so we got that, and that got more sounds. We had some downtime in New York, so I said, Jim, why don't you do a solo album, like a keyboard album? And I said, you got to call yourself James Newton Howard. He would never tell anybody his middle name. So I called his mother, and she said, it's Newton. And, you know, because he didn't like it. So I said, James Newton Howard. I said, that's great, man, and that should be your solo album name, you know, do it. So we did.
Like a board member at DuPont or
yeah,
something,
but
right?
it's, you know, like David Clayton Thomas, you know.
Right.
And so he took on the name, and we did 2 tracks there, and then went back to L.A., and I did the last Mama Lion album and the second Heavy Cruiser album. And at the end of that, when there was some downtime, the engineer, we brought him in from New York to work with us, and I didn't have much to add to Jim's thing because it was all keyboard. Right. It wasn't like I was going to play bass and you know, interfere with where he wanted to go as a producer. And I felt the engineer was James Vickers was good. So the 2 of them went on and worked on his project, the James Newton Howard solo album. Right. And during the time we were doing the Heavy Cruiser album, I also recruited him to play on some other things of mine, some other songs, and one of them was a song called "Let's Go Hide Away." Mm-hmm. So after everything was broke up and there was no more band, I went to play these demos for Michael Oakes at Shelter Records. Michael was Phil Oakes' manager and brother before Phil died, and he was working there. And I played him my stuff, and he heard this piano part on this "Let's Go Hideaway" song, and he freaked out, thought it was fantastic, and said, "Is this your keyboard guy?" He says, "Yeah, he is, and he was, but we're not playing together anymore." He says, "Well, then can I ask you, is he available?" I said, "For what?" He said, "For Elton John's new band. Elton wants a keyboard player." Wow. So I gave him the number and how to get a hold of James, and 2 weeks later he was playing Dodger Stadium with Elton. Then he went on to do, the whole thing. Sure. So then I moved to London, and I ran into him again, and he took me, he gave me seats to see the final concert that they did together as the group China was the name of the group. Right. And I got to see him play.
Wow,
and
that's fantastic.
Yeah.
And you were mentioning that James had, even through all these years, has some kind of a I don't know, I don't want to say relationship exactly, but some kind of situation with your wife, Vicky?
Oh, no. What happened was I hadn't seen him in years, probably 20 years. Mm-hmm. And I watched his success and everything, and one day we went through hell. My wife, we found out my wife had cancer, and we had Kaiser. And they wanted to do all this bad stuff, colostomy bag stuff, and they scared us to death. So through some friends, we found out about this Dr. Beert at USC. He did the Pope and Cardinal Mahoney, and so in the area it was in, we thought, geez, I wish we could go there and do that. Right. So I didn't know who to turn to, and I thought, who could help me? And one of the people that came to mind because of the success he was having was Jim. Right. So somehow I got his number. I don't know, from information. And I called up, and the guy says, "Who's this?" And I said, "It's Neil Merryweather." And Jim gets on the phone. "Hey, man, what's happening? How you doing, man?" And I told him, and I was like kind of sad and of course. Crying, I think. And he said, "What's wrong?" I told him. He said, "My business manager will call you in 5 minutes." Jim paid for everything. We were able to go outside of Kaiser, and basically he came through, and her life was saved. Because this Beert is a genius, and the funding from Jim did it all.
But that's, again, you're going to make me cry, but that's the power of the family of music.
Yes.
That really
is.
It's
one of those wonderful connections. I know he would probably not want me to say that, but
you know what? When a pay it forward happens, why not recognize it, right?
Yeah, he should be recognized for things like that.
That's wonderful. Wow.
Yeah.
Awesome.